Staff ready to proceed?
Yes, we are, Chair Frank.
Okay, good. So I'll call to order the regular meeting of the City of Oxnard Planning Commission meeting for Thursday, September 17, 2020. May we have roll call, please?
Chair Frank,
Here.
Vice Chair Sanchez,
Present.
Commissioner Chavez,
Here.
Commissioner Dozier,
Here.
Commissioner Fearing,
Here.
Commissioner Meyer, Commissioner Meyer,
Commissioner Meyer is present.
okay, we have a quorum.
Wonderful. Commissioner Fearing, can you lead us in the pledge?
Yes, I will. Place your right hand over your heart and repeat after me. I pledge allegiance
Pledge allegiance.
to the flag
Flag
of the United States of America
the United States of America,
and to the republic
and to the
for which it stands,
stands
which it stands,
one nation,
one nation,
under God,
under God,
indivisible,
indivisible,
with liberty and justice for all.
Justice for all.
Thank you so much. And now we'll move to item C on our agenda, public comments. These are on items that are not on our agenda. Do we have any public comment on items not on our agenda?
No, we do not have any.
Thank you. We'll move to our consent agenda, approval of the December 3, 2020 minutes. Anybody have any comment, corrections? I'll entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, so we have a motion by Chavez, Sanchez, and a second by Chavez. Can we have roll call, please? It was you, Commissioner Chavez, was it not?
For the second, yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Vice Chair Sanchez,
Yes.
Commissioner Chavez,
Yes.
Commissioner Dozier,
yes,
Commissioner Fearing,
Yes.
Commissioner Meyer,
Yes.
Chair Frank,
Yes,
motion passes.
thank you. We only have one item on our public hearing calendar, item F. Commissioners, are there any ex parte communications concerning this item?
No ex parte communications.
no,
No.
None for Commissioner Meyer.
Madam Chair,
Yes,
I just want to declare that a week before this item came before us to our attention, I had visited the site. I have also been in communication with the chair of the Commission of Homeless, Ms. Commissioner Rivera. Multiple conversations of her expressing her feelings about the project. At no point during that conversation did I ever disclose my opposition or support of the item.
but no ex partes with the parties involved with this item.
As far as the applicant goes, no, ma'am.
Thank you. Okay, so we'll move to item F1. This is the project, the Navigation Center project, planning and zoning permit numbers 20-500-3. That's a special use permit. And item permit number 20-535-04. This is the density bonus. We have planner Joe Pearson presenting this evening. So Mr. Pearson, if you would please proceed.
Chair Frank, this is Scott Kolitz. I'm going to jump in here for a quick second because Joe Pearson is a new face for all of you. So as a way of quick introduction, I just want to let you know that Joe comes to us from the city of Goleta, where he spent the last 7 years in the Planning and Environmental Review Department, where his primary duties included development review and processing, as well as project management. Prior to that, he was down in Orange County, working for the city of Tustin, the Orange County Business Council, and the County of Orange. Those different duties, it shouldn't come as a shock to anyone that his bachelor's was in business and economics, as well as a master of urban and regional planning from the University of Irvine. And most importantly, perhaps for all of us, is Joe's just really excited to be part of the Oxnard team. And we're excited that this is the first project that he gets to present to all of you. So with that, Joe, if you could take it away for us.
Thank you, Scott.
Welcome, Joe.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here. So getting into this project, good afternoon, Chair Frank and commissioners. Today we have a request for a homeless shelter and resource center in the downtown area. The first request is for a special use permit to allow for the homeless shelter and resource center within an approximately 13,000 square foot space of a approved mixed use building. The homeless shelter will include beds, showers, laundry facilities. They'll have meal programs, interior pet accommodations, as well as providing services to the residents that would be staying in the shelter. The building itself that the use will be located in was previously approved by the Community Development Director on November 30th, pursuant to the downtown code. And I will go through that in some more detail in my background section. Moving on, the second request before you today is a ministerial request for a density bonus permit. The density bonus permit is allowed pursuant to state law. If the applicant is proposing to have supportive housing, then the state law allows for them to request the removal of the parking requirements for the residential portion. So the density bonus would apply to the 56 residential units that are that was approved by the director. If the commission approves the special use permit, the required parking for the site would be reduced to a single space to serve the shelter. However, the project as proposed would be providing 10 spaces or 9 spaces in excess of what would be required. The project itself is located, as I mentioned, in the downtown area. This is an image at the corner of 2nd Street, looking at the building right across the street from the Civic Center. This is an aerial taking a look at the project site. The project site is surrounded by generally the downtown general zone, as well as the downtown core, which would be the Civic Center. It's mostly surrounded by vacant buildings, as well as a public parking lot to the west. Slightly further to the north and to the west, you get into a little bit more of the residential neighborhood area, but generally to the south and to the east are commercial spaces. So this is the general plan land use designation, which is downtown, which again allows for a mixture of commercial and residential uses. The downtown general zone also allows for a variety of commercial and residential uses. And that also includes the allowance of a homeless shelter and resource center, as well as other retail and office uses. So a little bit on the downtown code, which is what it's allowing for this project. The code itself was approved back in 2019. The code allowed for approximately 2,294 residential units to be developed under that code, as well as approximately 3 million square feet of commercial space. The downtown code, which came before the Planning Commission and the City Council, generally placed a lot of the approvals under the authority of the Community Development Director. So most of those approvals were pushed down in order to help facilitate development in the downtown area. One of the things that the downtown code did was it reduced a lot of the parking requirements. As shown on the screen, the residential parking requirement went down to approximately 0.5 spaces, with the requirement of a parking in lieu fee to make up for the other 0.5 space. So every unit would essentially be required to have a minimum of one space, but half of that space could be provided via a parking in lieu fee. It also placed a maximum on the number of units that could be provided in the for a lot of the residential projects, again, wanting to limit the amount of parking that was going to be devoted to the uses or to the area downtown. For the non-residential or commercial spaces, there is a 1 parking space per 1,000 square feet requirement. And that actually requires that half of that be provided via a parking in lieu fee. And the applicant or developer would also have the option of paying all of the commercial space as a parking in lieu fee. So they wouldn't have to provide any on-site so long as they paid that fee. As I was discussing, the downtown code is in process, or we're in process of working on a parking survey for downtown. This is still a draft document, but this generally shows all of the parking areas that are downtown. Again, draft study did determine that there was approximately 3,600 parking spaces in the study area. And that was not counting the residential or the private residential. About 1,000 were on the street, about 1,600 were publicly owned, and about 900 of those were private. And generally, the idea was that there were a lot of parking, or a lot of area being devoted to parking downtown already. So getting into the background, as I mentioned, the project itself, or the building and the actual physical improvements to the site have already been approved, and those were approved on November 30th by the Community Development Director. At the hearing, a downtown design review permit as well as a lot merger was approved for the demolition of the existing building on site, as well as the development of a 60,000 square foot mixed use building, which is the building in which the homeless shelter would be located in. That project included a series of conditions. The resolution from that approval was included as an attachment to the staff report. And so that also listed the conditions, but those included a parking management plan, affordable units. The project itself will be, or would have required the provision of 6 affordable units, but the project itself will be 100% affordable with the exception of a manager's unit, and that's will also be a requirement under the density bonus permit. There are also lighting plans and security plans that would be required as a condition of approval. And then the density bonus permit was also a condition of approval. They are required to obtain approval of that. Again, in order for the downtown design review permit to take effect. No appeals were filed on that project. So those 2 approvals are final, subject to the ministerial approval of the density bonus. Some of the, or a little more detail on the actual building itself. The building, or the residential portion of the building, included 56 units. And again, 55 of those would be the low income, and 1 of them would be dedicated to the manager's unit. They included 1 bedroom and 2 bedroom units. The approval included the commercial space, which is approximately 16,000 square feet when you account for the ground floor, as well as some office space on the 2nd floor, which will be used to provide services to the residents of the supportive housing project. There is the 10 parking spaces, as well as a public plaza that was provided on the corner. Here, so on the corner of 2nd and B Street, the downtown code requires that projects developed on a certain lot size provide a public space. So this plaza will be provided as a public open space. Again, they also included the street improvements, the trees, the parking area, and overall the site improvements. Looking a little more at the project that was previously approved, this is the second floor plan. Again, the downtown code also requires that residential projects provide a common open space area for the use of the residents. So this area will be open to the residents of the supportive housing project. And then the residential would be on the 4 floors, basically second, third, fourth, and fifth floor. And then only the second floor includes the office space that is kind of fronting onto 2nd Street. This is the building elevations. Again, this is what went before the director for approval. So this is looking at the 2 street frontages. The upper image would be the frontage facing 2nd Street, and then the lower would be the one facing B Street. And you can sort of see the plaza that would be tucked in on the corner there. Generally, the building is a modern style or contemporary with a variety of different materials and building interests consistent with the downtown architectural standards. And this is looking at the view from the alley and showing where the parking would be located, tucked underneath the building itself. And then the upper image would be backing onto the property to the north. And that's at the property line. So the landscaping there wouldn't necessarily be on that site. And so it would be dependent on what was developed on the property north of that. But it is based on a 0 lot line for the ground floor. So again, looking at the homeless shelter, which is the subject of the special use permit before you today. As I mentioned, the shelter will be located on the ground floor within the 13,000 square foot space of the mixed use building. The image generally outlines the kind of core areas of the shelter, with the sleeping areas for the men, women, and couples. There's showers and restrooms, common space, the lobby and office space that will front onto 2nd Street, as well as bike storage and other storage areas for the people who are staying in the shelter. Currently, the shelter is proposing to provide 110 beds. The shelter will operate 24 hours a day, so there will be somebody on site at all times. The shelter will operate on a referral basis only. And so there will not be a line of people waiting outside. Everybody would be given a time to come. And then there's also a lobby area provided where the people coming to the shelter would enter, and then they would be processed on the inside of the building. From talking to the operator, the target stay for the residents will be 90 days. However, they would be allowed to stay longer as permitted by the shelter itself or the shelter operator. The downtown or the project is consistent with many of the goals and policies of the downtown code as well as the general plan. Specifically, there's 2 programs or implementation programs called out in the housing element that call for program 14 has the objective of continuing to work towards the development of a year-round emergency shelter. And then essentially the program encourages development of a shelter near the city center. And this is because the city center allows for structures to be developed with minimal setbacks. There's a lot of space due to the vacant lots and buildings. And they have access to public transit, medical and commercial services, which are all appropriate for a shelter and very much needed by a shelter. Program 15 has the objective of continue to implement a program with shelter for women and children and winter warming services that averages 700 persons a night. That again is the objective. And again, this would be a year-round shelter that would be available to each of those groups. And it would also provide for provision of transitional living and permanent supportive housing. And then lastly, the downtown code itself specifically calls out homeless shelter and resource center as a permitted use in the downtown general zone, subject to a special use permit, which is what is before you today. The code has standards, which I outlined in the SNAF report, that every emergency shelter must comply with. So those operational standards and development standards have been incorporated into the project itself and into the project conditions. So again, this shelter is part of the long-term strategy of addressing homelessness in the city of Oxnard. Back in 2018, there was a 5-year plan put together. And again, it was to address the issue of homelessness in the city of Oxnard and give direction to better serve the unsheltered population. In 2018, the point in time count estimated that there was approximately 400 people homeless in Oxnard on a given day. And so there was 5 core areas identified in that plan. And one of them was the development of a 24-hour homeless shelter and navigation center. And the strategy was specifically identified as the prong towards getting people off the streets and providing an opportunity to build sustainable homeless entry and exit systems, which created needed pathways to end homelessness. The other permit before you, or the request before you today, is the density bonus permit request. This is a ministerial state mandated parking standard modification. The language on the slide comes directly from the state law, which is if the project consists solely of rental units and they are affordable, as well as a supportive housing development, then the city or county shall not impose any minimum vehicular parking requirements. So the project itself and the conditions will be conditioned to comply with this, and that would be done through an agreement with the city of Oxnard. Some of the kind of key conditions that are placed on the special use permit, which is for the use of the shelter in the existing building, generally resolve around the creation of a operational plan for the shelter. The operational plan itself would be reviewed and approved by multiple city departments that all generally have a stake in the operation of the shelter, including community development, fire, police, and housing. The operational plan itself would generally include referrals and client eligibility, admission criteria and procedures, loitering controls, housing navigation, support services, health policies, food policies, transportation policies, exit and readmission communication, and coordination with local neighborhoods, communication and coordination with local businesses and governmental agencies, requirements for on-site security, safety policies, and indoor and outdoor management of the facility itself. And so the operation plan would also incorporate some of the standards that I mentioned previously from the Oxnard City Code. And then most importantly, the condition 14 allows for periodic updates. Again, this document is intended to in some ways be living and to be updated as needed. so that the operator, the city, and locals can kind of work together and address any issues if any arise. The condition 20 requires the patrol of the adjacent neighborhood. The map shown on here has a 500 and 1,000 foot buffer from the proposed shelter property. As I mentioned previously, the residential areas are generally located to the north and to the west. So being sensitive to those areas, the patrol requirements as currently conditioned would be 1,000 feet into both of those areas. And then as we look to the commercial areas to the south and to the east, it'd be a slightly reduced patrol area, and that would be 500 feet. So again, this image just generally kind of shows it would go up to about Palm Street on the north, about over to about East Street on the west, and then Oxnard Boulevard to the east, and then 3rd Street to the south, which is generally includes the Civic Center area. And as currently proposed, there'd be a patrol a minimum of 4 times per week. The condition as currently written does allow for that to be increased based on discussions between the community development director, the housing director, and police chief. And this would be done on an as needed basis if it was determined that additional patrols were needed. That could be done through the current condition. As we look at the density bonus permit, as I mentioned, the project will have to comply with the state law in order to allow for the density bonus. So condition 6 requires that the developer enter into an agreement to ensure the required affordability levels and restrictions pursuant to government code 65915. And that agreement would be monitored by the housing department to ensure their compliance. The environmental review, the project would be exempt. The project, as being presented today, only includes the use of the homeless shelter and resource center as the building and other physical improvements have already been approved, as well as the ministerial density bonus permit for the parking modification, which is allowed pursuant to state law. The project itself is located within an existing developed area, surrounded by urban uses. It would be served by existing utilities. The site is currently developed, so it has no value for habitat or endangered species. And the project would not have any impacts related to traffic, noise, air quality, or water quality. As again, we're just looking at the use today and the density bonus permit. So as we get back to the shelter itself, the shelter has been, a thought for a long time. And beginning kind of this year, there's been a lot of outreach. So this provides generally a list of the different public meetings that have been held. Many of them were earlier in the year, as with COVID kind of limited a lot of the outreach that could have been done. But these covered, except quite a few, and there's some of the images from those that attended the meeting, where again, the project was presented to the various community groups. And also to add, the police department was consulted as part of this. The primary concerns that were raised during staff's discussion with the police department were generally related to homeless rejected from the facility or not eligible for entry, staying around in the area, as well as coordination regarding non-compliant patrons. So kind of in response to these concerns, that was how many of the conditions came to be constructed. So requiring the neighborhood patrols to try to eliminate the impacts to the adjacent areas, and then the creation of the operation plan. And as I mentioned, the police chief would also be part of that discussion. So there would be coordination with them on creating a plan that worked for everybody, as well as the creation of a security and emergency preparedness plan. And those are also included as conditions. Since the project itself has been submitted, we've gone through a community workshop, and that was held virtually on October 19th. Notices were mailed to all the property owners in the Wilson neighborhood. We did have approximately 13 members of the public that came for this meeting. The comments were mixed. There were people in support of the general redevelopment of the downtown area, the provision of the affordable housing. However, there were some concerns regarding the potential for the homeless shelter being located in the downtown area or near the residential. But again, that was, we've included those conditions to address those concerns. And again, those documents are meant to be something that can be reactive to issues as they arise. Additionally, the notice of this hearing tonight was posted on site and mailed to adjacent properties. And prior to this meeting, one public comment was received formally, and that was the comment that was provided to you from the chair of the Oxnard Commission on Homelessness. So lastly, staff's recommendation is that we find the project, or that Planning Commission find the project categorically exempt pursuant to the Class 32 exemption for infill development. That the Planning Commission adopt the resolution approving the planning and zoning permit 2500-03, the special use permit, subject to the findings and conditions provided in the resolution, and approve resolution or adopt resolution approving planning zoning permit 2535-04 for the density bonus, again, subject to certain findings and conditions provided in the resolution. So that's the end of my presentation. I know the applicant team has prepared a presentation, and the housing department also has some comments to provide after the applicant's presentation. But I'm here if there are any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think it would be best for us to just move into the applicant's presentation at this time. Is the applicant prepared to proceed?
Yeah, we're pulling up the applicant's presentation right now.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you.
And applicant team, Brittany, perhaps?
Yes. Hi, good evening. Thank you, Joe, for that presentation, and thank you, commissioners, for hearing our project and our SUP tonight. I just wanted to introduce our team a little bit. I am Brittany Seneff, Development Manager with Community Development Partners. And of course, we have a strong partnership with Mercy House, who is also here tonight. If we can go to the next slide. I think we have one before this. Perfect. Yeah, just introducing CDP a little bit. So we are a certified B Corp, which is just a reflection of our dedication to our mission. And our mission is to develop life-enhancing housing, just by building innovative and sustainable neighborhoods with a focus on the long-term community engagement. We don't want to just come in and build a project and leave. We're really looking to add to the community and help build that engagement and really just uplift the population. And in our portfolio, we've completed 22 projects. We have 3 currently under construction. 7 of those are permanent supportive housing. So this is something that's not new to us. We have a lot of experience with, and Mercy House will go on to tell you their experience with the shelter component. So as a team, we just feel really strong that we have a lot to bring to the table and a lot to bring to Oxnard and to this population. We develop throughout 4 states, California, Nevada, Oregon, and Arizona. And our role in this project is to be the lead developer, and we would really be the person that you go to. I would be the person that you go to for just day-to-day issues throughout the development process. So I know while we're here to talk about the SCP and the shelter component, we still want to, just understand and discuss that it is within this larger project that also includes the permanent supportive housing, which CDP will take a large role in. So we're committed to the project as a whole, and just wanted to introduce ourselves and be here for questions at the end. And we can go to the next slide. Okay, Mercy House, let's hear a little bit more about you for the team.
Well, good evening. Thank you, commissioners, for allowing us to speak to you this evening. My name is Larry Haynes. I'm the CEO of Mercy House. I have actually had the pleasure of being with Mercy House since its inception, so a little over 30 years. Mercy House is located all throughout Southern California, as well as a small footprint in Maricopa County in Arizona as well. We typically do 3 things programmatically speaking. We provide street outreach. We operate a number of large-scale, low-threshold emergency shelters or navigation centers. And we also have developed and operate several permanent housing sites. We serve both single adults as well as families. We basically have served all populations. We are highly experienced and have a history of being a good partner both with cities and with surrounding neighborhoods, which we will talk about a little bit later. I know after Brittany reviews a little bit on some of the conceptual renderings, we'll circle back specifically to the projects at hand in a little more detail about the shelter that we will operate. Although there's a very extensive and a terrific presentation already. Our role in this is to be the managing general partner and a primary service provider. So when it comes to the day-to-day operations, whether it's for the permanent supportive housing project or the emergency shelter / navigation center, we would be your contact person on that. I appreciate being here tonight, and we look forward to addressing your questions in more detail. And with that, Brittany, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you. We can go to the next slide. Okay, again, Joe, you did a fantastic job running through the project. So just to step back again, this is an overall conceptual rendering. The shelter component would be on the ground level of this building, and then the 4 floors above would be our permanent supportive housing units. So while they're different components, again, we would all work together to make this a successful project. And we can go to the next slide, please. We did get a look at this previously, but this is just to really give a visual of the shelter layout and kind of how it fits in with the overall project site. And it is the majority of the ground level, and we understand how important this component is. So as a team, we've really looked into it and determined what Mercy House would need to make this site and this shelter successful, given their knowledge of the population. And that will actually be the next slide that they'll talk about what they're going to do for the TI build out to make sure that it meets all of their needs. So Larry or Timothy, if you want to just talk a little bit about your envision for the build out.
Sure, I will introduce Timothy. Also joining us is Timothy Nguyen, who is our Chief Program Officer. If we can go to the next slide, please. Now, Timothy, I'm about to throw it to you, so please don't be caught off guard. Obviously, there was a great review at the beginning, so we don't need to walk through the entire flow. But Timothy, there might have been a few things in terms of the build out that wasn't touched upon. Could you take a few seconds here and just touch on any highlights that maybe the commission would like to know before I'll go into a little more detail about our operations?
Yeah, sure. Just one thing I want to highlight about us and our current partnership with the city is we have a deep partnership with the city and their outreach teams. We currently operate the navigation center in Oxnard at the formerly the Armory site. And so we're already in the system and have a system by which we're outreaching into the community with the city's partners and operating a navigation center just like this one, except this will be new and more robust.
Timothy, is there anything more that wasn't touched on in terms of any other sort of tenant improvements that wasn't touched on, or was the report fairly comprehensive earlier? Anything else that needs to be highlighted?
The report was very thorough. I mean, we can talk about the details of like the numbers of beds, or the warming kitchen, or there's a nice there's a patio outside where clients can enjoy some outdoor space and those kinds of details. But I'll save that for the Q&A maybe.
That's great. That's great. If we can go ahead and go to the next slide then, please. So just to touch on a couple of things, as Timothy had mentioned, this is obviously replacing the current temporary shelter, whose picture you see there. And a couple of things that I think are important in terms of the management plan, because it does address to what some of the concerns might be. This is a shelter that operates on a bed reservation system. So that means that they know that people cannot walk up to the facility and get services or gain entry into the shelter. There'll be no reason for people to line up. Also, this is not, I'm going to be careful with my words here, this is not sort of a typical shelter where you line up and hope you get a spot every time, which obviously incentivizes that sort of thing. Once you're in the system and you're working on your housing plan, and we're working on getting you into housing. So there's really no need for that. We will have staff and security 24/7. We will provide neighborhood patrols as what was addressed previously. And we have a very long history of being a good neighbor. It's probably worth noting, we have dozens of projects, both in terms of shelter and permanent housing. And in our 30-year history, we have a long history of not having a negative impact on our surrounding neighborhoods, and actually being quite a good partner to our surrounding neighborhoods. We have testimony after testimonial of folks who once upon a time had grave concerns about us moving into their neighborhood, but were pleasantly surprised. And at the end, you'll see there's one of those such testimonials at the end as well. If we can go ahead and just go to the next slide very briefly, please. And I know we're not really here to talk a whole lot about permanent supportive housing, but just as a reminder in terms of the number of units, we have 54 units plus, or excuse me, 55 units plus a manager's unit. We are serving the the chronic homeless population. And again, just to reiterate, I know it's on some of our earlier presentation material, but we have a success rate of once a person is housed, our retention rate, annually speaking, is around 94, 95% every single year, even for people who have been homeless for years and years at a time. We have demonstrated that we know how to make housing work for nearly everyone. And we anticipate having the same level of success when we come to the city of Oxnard. Our intent, because we're part of a system of care, obviously we'll need to take referrals from the coordinated entry system, but it is our assumption to lobby to make sure that the people who get moved in there, that the folks who are coming from the shelter have priority. We would anticipate being able to do that because that is a process that we've been able to do in every other continuum that we've worked in up and down the state. With that, I'm going to go ahead and go to the next slide that will provide contact information. If after the meeting you see mine and Brittany's information there. What generally happens frequently is after a meeting, after a conversation, someone thinks something or forgets something. So you have both of our email addresses, and both Brittany and I are more than happy to handle not only questions tonight, but anything that might come up at a later date as well. With that, I think we can go ahead and put up on the screen the testimonial from one of our neighbors at the current location that we are operating. And I believe, Brittany, unless you have anything more to add, I believe we are ready to address any questions that that the commission might have for us.
No, thank you, Larry. That was great. I think we're ready to help answer any questions.
Okay. I don't have the chance to read Mr. Tran's testimony, so we'll move on. Thank you very much for the presentations, very informative. Commissioners, I defer to you for questions. I can't see my commissioners, so.
Maybe we could flip the screen back.
We tried to. There you are. All right. Commissioners, Questions, comments of either the applicant or city staff?
Yes. Chair
Commissioner
Frank.
Dozier.
Thank you, Chair Frank. And thank you, staff, Brittany and Larry, for the excellent presentations. If someone from Mercy House could just briefly give me a summary of the types of amenities that you offer, meaning such as like food, cooking, can people eat in just designated spots, smoking allowed in and out of the house. I also saw that there was a pet care, so that's a good thing. But if you could just kind of give me a general overview of the amenities that are available.
Sure, I'll just talk briefly. I'll make a couple of introductory comments, and I'm going to turn it over to Timothy for some of the details. Commissioner Dozier, you rightly commented on, for example, the amenities for pets, for example. And there was a point there that I wanted to make sure that we made. You know, too frequently, historically, and I've been at this a very long time, in the history of shelters, particularly in California, has been that sometimes we create these things that unintentionally create barriers for homeless persons to access and to actually address their homelessness. And so one of the reasons that you see things like having amenities for pets and making sure that we could take people in is because what we have found over the years is that is oftentimes a primary reason why somebody won't access shelter in the first place. And if they're not going to access the facility, then it limits what we can do for them. So everywhere that we can to try to lower thresholds and lower barriers, we in fact try and do. With that, I'm going to turn over to Timothy to address some of the more specific amenities that we have. Timothy.
Thank you, Larry. So when we talk about our shelters, we want our shelters to be low barrier shelters, and part of that is we include, like Larry said, we allow folks to bring in their pets. We typically have a ratio of 1 pet per 10 people. So with 110 beds, we would have an allowance for 11 pets. We provide 3 meals a day for our shelter guests. And so we have our meals catered in nutritional food, a variety of different foods. We work really closely with our partners to have a really high standard of meals for our folks, because having a good nutrition plan is part of restoring the care and the dignity of the person. And so we will have a warming kitchen. All the food will be made off-site and delivered to the site every day. And stored. The cold food will be kept cold, and the hot food will be kept hot in the warming kitchen. It'll be served every day, 3 meals a day. There'll be space to eat in the common area. We have showers and restrooms available for clients there, so that everyone can have the dignity of a hot shower. Ample showers for people both genders, as well as ADA accessible, gender neutral or non-gendered showers. Another thing that we find is really important in our shelters is we provide storage for our guests. So we have both, we call it our outdoor bin storage, although in this case, it's not outdoors. We've carved out some space in the shelter. You can see it on the bottom right of the map there. Every client that comes in will be issued a storage bin, right? And they'll be able to keep a certain amount of their items in those storage bins. They're private items. We know that a barrier for folks living on the streets coming in is having to let go of what may be all of their possessions. And so by giving folks an opportunity to put things in the storage bin and keep it safe and not have to worry about, are people going to go through their things? Is someone going to steal all of their belongings? We find that really lowers the barrier for folks to enter. We also have bike storage on site, so that folks, if a bike is a person's only means of transportation, we don't want them to leave that on the street. We give them the opportunity to take that bike into the shelter, and we'll keep it safe for them. They don't have to worry about somebody stealing it or the parts walking away. They can lock it up there and sleep safely at night.
Okay. And Postal Service, do you guys have some type of Postal Service?
Yeah, so clients will be allowed to have mail routed to the shelter, and we'll sort the mail and give them their mail. Obviously, once they move out of the shelter, it'd be on them to forward the address, change the addresses.
Commissioner Dozier, if I may interrupt, I apologize. I'm just going to do a highlight, and then I'll turn over to Timothy for more. In terms of some services, I can anticipate a question of what are some of the wraparound services that we might provide. So what I will start with is the most important thing that we will do for every one of our clients, because the name of the game isn't to manage someone's homelessness, it's to end homelessness. And we know that the end of homelessness is centered around housing above all else. And so we know that in order for that to be successful, we need to create a housing plan, actually multiple housing plans for every one of our residents that'll be there. So when someone's there, in theory, you should be able to walk up to anyone and say, tell me about your housing plan. And they should be able to do so. Are you a candidate? Have you been assessed or a candidate for permanent supportive housing? Are you a better fit for maybe rapid rehousing, or perhaps, perhaps redirection back, to your, out of the area, whatever the case might be. But really the emphasis that you're going to see in terms of, visual cues, in terms of all of our case management, in terms of all that we do, is really all going to be centered around getting somebody placed in housing. And Timothy, I don't know if you want to touch on some of our other wraparound types of services that we typically provide, but I wanted to make sure that really was the emphasis.
Okay.
Excuse me, while we're on that topic and before you move on, Mr. Haynes, has anyone done an inventory of the available housing that will serve the transitional population?
Well, what we do know in all of Ventura County, because we also operate not only in the city. I'm sorry, I feel like I'm not answering your question, ma'am. I'm sorry.
Well, I'm looking at the numbers. You've got 110 beds and you've got 50, 6 apartments. So once people are occupying those apartments, you're out of space to transition your shelter residents. So I'm just wondering what kind of research has been done for where the people go. If you want to confine it to Ventura County, that's a very large space. So
I do understand that the intent isn't to have every single person who is staying at the shelter be housed at the same location. That no navigation centers work that way. What I am suggesting is that we are actually we are creating multiple housing opportunities throughout Ventura County.
And I guess I'm asking what they are.
I'm so sorry, ma'am. I couldn't quite hear that.
I guess I'm asking what those are.
What they are?
Yes.
Okay. Well, we are we have another RFP in this in the city. Excuse me. We have the Project Home Key that's being created also in the city of Oxnard. We have another response that another opportunity that we're responding to in the city of Ventura. We also are engaged with the county in conversations about expanding both our rapid rehousing and our scattered site models for permanent supportive housing.
Okay.
We are also in conversation.
All Mercy House projects.
Well, the ones that I just referenced are Mercy House. Are Mercy House. However, I would say that any navigation center that's created, really, it's part of an overall system, right? It's not all just the provider. When it really comes to housing, it's part of an entire team that includes outreach as well as housing. This is a navigation center that will be a feeder into not just simply Mercy House projects, but in other surrounding nonprofits, other surrounding community partners as well.
So you're creating a pipeline. That's what I'm looking for.
Yes, that is exactly what we are creating.
Standalone project is insufficient to house the people that move out of your shelter. So I was just looking for, there is a pipeline in progress for the future people coming out of this facility.
Yes, please.
That's what I was looking for.
Got you. Please.
I read the staff report and I've listened to your presentation. I don't see anything discussing that. So,
well, I would defer to city staff on that, because that's probably, at any rate, I accept my apologies. I wasn't quite understanding the nature of your question. But this is one piece in the overall system of care.
Okay.
And Chair Frank, this is Scott Kolitz. If I could jump in here for just a second, I wanted to remind the Planning Commission that our Housing Director, Emilio Ramirez, and our Housing Manager, Elsa Brown, are on this call. And I know that they wanted to speak as well to you, so this might be a good opportunity for them to talk about the greater vision that the Housing Department has.
I'm going to let Commissioner Dozier finish his train of thought.
Very
okay.
Good.
Thank you, Chair. I just have two other quick questions. One being, since we have the schematics up, could you point out the entrance for the shelter and the entrance for the affordable units that will be above it?
Yeah, the entrance for the shelter is at the south. You can see there it says lobby and there's a south facing door. And so so clients coming into the shelter will come through that south-facing door into the lobby. You notice there's a lot of offices around that space. That's where our navigators will be. And so it's in those rooms where our clients will meet with the navigators for their sort of one-on-one case management, where they'll make those housing plans, where they'll identify the steps to move towards housing. Just north of those lobbies, you'll see there's a double door that's facing to the west, right? And that is the sort of the first floor lobby for the permanent supportive housing. So folks who are upstairs residents will enter through that room. There's a mail room in there, I believe, as well as a front desk and an elevator where that'll give them access to the remainder of the building.
Okay, and my last question is if you could just briefly summarize the guest rules for the shelter.
Of course. So a lot of our guest rules are centered around the housing plan, right? So we want to tie the expectations for behavior back to how does this affect your housing plan? And so kind of some of the questions that everyone asks. So we don't allow drugs or alcohol on premises. We don't we don't allow acts of violence or behavior that endangers the health and safety of the staff or the shelter residents. So those are kind of our big red flags. And then there's a whole document of expectations for every client when they come in. A part of the intake is we sit them down and we talk about the shelter expectations. We talk about health and safety expectations. We talk about cleanliness. We talk about maintaining their area. We talk about maintaining their belongings. We talk about how they interact with each other.
In specific, I was referring more to a visitor coming to visit.
We don't allow visitors to come in and visit in the shelter.
Okay. That answered my question. So thank you, Tim, Larry, Brittany, and staff for an excellent presentation. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Dozier. All right, Mr. Collins, if you'd like to call the city staff who cares to make a presentation. Is the appropriate time?
Emilio Ramirez is on the panel with all of you. And I don't believe Emilio has his own presentation, but I believe he has words that he would like to share with you. So we'll, Emilio, if you could chime in here, that'd be great. And if you don't need the schematics that we have up on the screen, we could take those down as well.
You can leave them there. Good evening, everybody. My name is Emilio Ramirez. I'm Director of Housing for the City of Oxnard. I honestly don't have a presentation. I'm available to answer any questions. What I can say is that Mercy has been in operation of the Navigation Center on K Street now for 2 years. And in those 2 years, we've had a very positive experience and have not had any negative comments or experience on K Street, including the testimonial you saw earlier today. We did procure Mercy to operate the shelter together with the county and the city of Ventura, and they have been in successful operations. I am happy to answer any questions that you may have. We are looking forward to adding this tool to the toolkit. And part of the question that was asked by Chair Frank a little while ago, by no means do we intend that this one single tool, this homeless shelter, is going to be the solution to homelessness. But we think that it will add to the success, and we think we need it as part of the overall spectrum of services that will be offered.
All right, Commissioner Dozier, do you have any further questions or comments?
No, Madam Chair, I'm finished. Thank you.
You can always circle back around if you do. Commissioners, anyone, questions?
Yes, Chair Frank, if I may.
Meyer?
Yes, thank you. Sure, while we have Mr. Ramirez available, I think one question that would be helpful, if it's not too broad, is just a conceptual understanding of how we see this piece fitting into larger pieces. I think it's critical that we have housing and navigation support for helping people who are homeless to no longer be homeless. I always wonder, of course, about having attractive, successful pieces in place. Does that lead to an endless cycle of people moving into this area from other neighboring areas that don't. And how that works out. That's probably a bigger question, and it's not an easy solution, but I'm interested in seeing how that doesn't become, the direction where homeless people are drawn to endlessly.
Let me try to answer that in two parts. First of all, I think that the objective of this navigation center is exactly that, is navigation. The objective is not necessarily a place to sleep overnight, although that is a safety component, and so is the meal program, so is all those other things. But the objective is case management and navigation. So if you consider a path that a person might take from the street to a home, that involves case management and counseling and support services and all of these other things, and this is part of that path. And so yes, we are looking to add this to that path, in addition to landlord engagement, in addition to Section 8 vouchers, in addition to affordable housing development, employment development, job development, sobriety, all these other programs that will be added as part of that path or that navigation that Mercy will offer. And for that matter, graduation potentially from the navigation center to the permanent supportive housing atop the shelter that we're looking on screen now. And therein lies a successful partnership that has already been demonstrated by Mercy with CDP, and for that matter, by Mercy and other developers and other landlords and et cetera. And my prior experience with Mercy in other areas of the state. To your second question, there is a lot of research in every direction that suggests that a person that is homeless or a person that is transient makes a decision to relocate based on their personal decision. And it is not necessarily based on the service that is being offered or the ability to live comfortably while being homeless. I think that if that was the case, there would not be anybody homeless in Chicago where it's cold and snowing and et cetera. But there is a decision that is made based on a lot of different factors. Sometimes it's, I'm going to move to Oxnard because that's where my mom lives and I need to be near her. Or sometimes it's, I'm going to move to Oxnard because I need to get away from the environment that I live in this other city because I want to pursue a success point. But it very seldom is, I'm gonna move to Oxnard because they're giving away free money or they're giving away free, et cetera. It may very well be that they're after the success of Mercy. And I think that is an incredible merit for Mercy. If Mercy has a success point of being able to end homelessness for a person and accomplish housing, and a person is aggressive enough and knowledgeable enough to be able to pursue that, it's an amazing thing. But the numbers don't show it. The numbers do not identify that people move to a place where the services are being offered. There's transition both ways, this way and that way. The Ventura shelter is up and running, it's brand new, et cetera. And I'm not seeing people move from Oxnard to Ventura. I just don't see it. There are people living here that need service. So we think, on top of all of that, even if that does happen to some extent, we still have an obligation to our residents that aren't sheltered in Oxnard. And we're not gonna just ignore that need because potentially someone from Ventura comes to Oxnard to live in a shelter. If that happens, we'll accept it, but we have an obligation to the unsheltered population that lives in Oxnard. And I think that ultimately that's what we're doing here. The unsheltered count is in Oxnard, it's a lot more than 110 beds. And we are going to need to be able to continue to provide this path, this navigation, this affordable housing development, job development, wage development in an effort to accomplish the ultimate objective. I don't see an influx of homelessness coming to Oxnard because of the shelter.
Thank you, Ms. Rears. I appreciate that perspective. Definitely. I do. I have heard stories and maybe read stories of cities providing one-way tickets to people who are homeless to go to somewhere else, or one-way flights from one destination to another, things like that. And I don't know how rampant that is, but that's the kind of thing that makes me wonder when we have such a disjointed situation with homelessness, jurisdiction to jurisdiction, how we address that. But it sounds like you don't feel like that's a significant concern based on the research.
I don't think that is a significant, I mean, it does happen. I'm not going to say that it does happen. There are jurisdictions and organizations that undertake that method. And first of all, it's illegal. It's illegal for a hospital discharge without a discharge plan and just to dump a person on the side of the road. But, you know, people do illegal things. I can tell you that in Oxnard, would we buy a ticket to another place? Yes, we would. But would we buy it without knowing that that other place is a safe landing spot, that there is a job, that there is a housing unit, that there is a function? No, we wouldn't just get out of my community and deal with someone else. We would never do that. And any responsible homeless program would never do that. But on the other hand, I have done it personally. A person has been working to be a job trained, to be trained in a vocation, and they found a job in Texas and they have a place to live. And the only reason that's holding them back from success to get this job and get this place is just travel to Texas. Absolutely, I would do it. There's a success point that's about to happen. The navigation that Mercy offered is about to succeed. And for lack of $200 to get to Texas, they're not going to succeed. Absolutely, we would do that. But not just get out of my community and let someone else deal with it.
Great, thanks very much.
Commissioners?
Madam Chair.
Yes, Commissioner Chavez.
Thank you for the presentation, staff, applicant, and I have a number of questions, and whoever ultimately it jives with, please chime in. I'm very curious as far as the process on how a person actually gets into the 110 beds. I know that there is a background check based off of the staff report, but what does that background check actually consist of? Is it a life scan? Is it you take their information and give it to PD? What exactly does the whole intake process look like?
I'll take that question. So all of our intakes, so we talked about earlier about how we use a bed reservation system. So everybody who comes into the shelter, they come in through the county's coordinated entry system. CES is the acronym we use for that. I think it's called Pathways Home is the next name for it. But in the CES system, we have partners, all the outreach partners who are working with homeless folks on the streets. They'll do an assessment with folks to see if they qualify for the shelter, right? So they have to meet certain qualifying criterion. And part of those qualifying criterion is that they can't have an active felony warrant and they can't be 290 registered sex offenders. Right? And so and both of those are background check items that folks, we can do that using publicly available database. So the 290 registration check, we use Megan's Law database. And for the active felony warrants, we use the, I believe it's the courts, the Superior Courts has that publicly available. And so the outreach partners do that. And then our staff, when we make our intake reservations, we'll double check that process too to make sure that people with those two criterion are allowed into the shelter. So that's the background check process and kind of a short summary of the reservation system process also.
Now, how long does that process normally take? Do they, the homeless individual get an answer in that same day, in a couple of minutes, hours?
So if they're working with our outreach partners in the field, they can do that process as quickly as they have internet access. So if I'm at a computer now and you tell me your name and birth date, in the next 5 minutes, I could look up that information for you.
Okay. Can you also, or anyone, lay out the services that are actually going to be provided at this location?
In addition to the meals and showers and beds, we've also talked about housing navigation. So that's kind of a catch-all term for the case management that we have. Right. So within that case management, within housing navigation, it really does differ from client to client. Right? So some clients may qualify for a bevy of benefits, right? And so we're going to do benefits advocacy with that client. We're going to try to connect them to Social Security or disability or veterans benefits or any other thing that they qualify for. If it's out there and they qualify for it, we want to connect them to it because that's going to be something that's going to connect them to housing, right? If we have somebody who's in the shelter and they're just out of their luck, they're having a hard time and they just need help to get a job, right? We're going to connect them with job services. We're going to get them a new wardrobe, and we're going to work on their resume with them, and we're going to see that they make applications to jobs, and we're going to get them back on their feet that way. Sometimes, and Emilio talked about this earlier, we do what's called redirection or shelter diversion, right? If we come into the shelter and someone says, hey, I'm homeless, I came from Texas, but my mom's in Texas, and she said I can come back to her, I just need a bus ride out there. But we're gonna call that person's mom, and we're gonna verify that that's a real shelter diversion, and then we have resources to connect them back to housing so that they go back there. So every case plan is different, and we're gonna engage with the services that are needed for each individual.
Now, I had a question that Director Ramirez brought up in regards to Section 8. Director Ramirez said the waiting list for Section 8, does the homeless have their own voucher set aside, or is it general POP vouchers for everybody?
It's a little bit of both and more than that, actually. There are different kinds of vouchers. For example, VASH. There is something called a Veteran Assisted Supportive Housing, which is a Section 8 type voucher that's issued by the Veteran Affairs Office for a homeless veteran. So that is a separate wait list that is not the regular Section 8 wait list. There's also something called a mainstream voucher, which is for a person that's chronically homeless. So it's a separate wait list. But all of those people would also qualify for the regular Section 8 voucher, and they would also qualify for regular public housing. So it's a little bit of combination of a bunch of different things. And therein lies the success of the partnership that we would have with Mercy's navigation team. They would have a client in the shelter that's a veteran. They would call us and say, we have a veteran and they're at this point where they qualify for a VASH. My wait list is 30 days. Okay, I'll apply right now. They'll be in the shelter for 30 days and we're moving forward. Therein lies the housing plan that they identify, and we work it that way. That's part of the path, if you will, the navigation that occurs.
Now, what if it's a regular person, non-veteran person, is a chronic homeless individual? What is the wait time for them for a general Section 8 voucher?
Well, I mean, if for whatever reason they don't qualify for a mainstream voucher, which is homeless, chronically homeless, or VASH, or one of our 15 homeless set-aside vouchers, or something like that, or an affordable permanent supportive housing unit that's in town, or something like that, then they would apply to the regular Section 8 wait list, which is long. 4 years, 5 years, extensive. And for that matter, right now the Section 8 list is closed. So if that's what is happening, then it would be a fairly extensive list. I'm positive, I don't want to speak for Mercy, but I don't think that they would leave it at that. I don't think they would just say, okay, well, we're going to wait for 10 years. They would work on another plan and see if something else happens. Get on the wait list anyways and have plan A and plan B and plan C and et cetera, and see which one happens.
And I appreciate that, Mr. Haynes. Before you comment, I just wanted, because this might tie into what you are going to talk about. The reason why I asked about the Section 8 is because in the staff report, it says that an individual can be there up to 90 days, but that extensions could be made. One, if the 90 days come, how long after can they rejoin the shelter? That's question number one. Question number two, if an extension is given, how many extensions can they get and how long are those extensions? So I'll leave those two questions, and Mr. Haynes, you can go with your comments.
Sure. And thank you. And Timothy, please fill in any blanks that I might miss. So I think there's a couple of things here that I wanted to address. Emilio is absolutely right. This and the reason, yes, we would tell somebody to go ahead and get on the list, even though it may be time prohibitive that it would actually work for them. But this is exactly why when we do our housing plans, you have multiple housing plans. You always have a plan B and a plan C for this very reason. The other thing that I would say is that we're very data-driven. We're a very data-driven organization, and as we look at the data of our other navigation centers, we find a surprisingly high number of folks that are able to secure housing without additional benefits. It's actually fairly surprising how resourceful folks can be when given some support. Not everybody is going to follow the same path or the same strategy. And so while I am in, my own opinion is that we need more housing and more vouchers and more Section 8 and more of that. I would always lobby for more of that. I don't know any community that has enough, but that is not the only path. I would like to really address, though, I think you bring up a very important question about the 90-day thing. Our plan, it's not a 90-day limit. That is what we would anticipate is sort of the average or median stay of a person. It doesn't do us any good to kick someone out. If they are working their housing plan, it doesn't do us any good to kick them out just because an artificial number has come up. Best practices across the country, nobody places that sort of limit on the housing stay. That has not been a best practice for decades, over a decade, and all across the country. For some people, they're going to get housing in a few weeks. For other folks, it may take them a year. It may take them several months. That's how these things go. And so to your question is, how many, how long will someone stay? How many extensions will they get? Well, honestly, as long as they're doing what they are supposed to be doing, right? As long as they are acting in good faith, as many as it takes. The number that we're citing is, statistically speaking, is based on our experience in managing our other navigation centers for what the approximate average is. Some people are going to be much longer, and a lot of that is going to be driven by their own vulnerabilities and their own opportunities, and some people are going to move out. But our plan is to get everyone housed who's working their housing plan.
Okay, let me ask, because I believe Director Ramirez said that Mercy took over the operation as the operator of the current K Street location. It's a 24-hour shelter, very similar to what the new building is going to look like. How many individuals that have gone through the 110 beds are on the right path of their housing plan?
Oh man, I'm probably going to have to defer to Timothy on that. I don't have the data in front of me, but I will say that every single person who is there is on a housing plan. Every single person who is there is working a housing plan. I don't have the data in front of me at my fingertips of those 110 that are there. How many are doing better or doing worse or not following what they're supposed to? I'm so sorry, sir. I just don't have that data in front of me right now.
That's fine.
Can I interject to try to answer that a little bit?
Yes, Director.
Again, I don't have numbers memorized. However, I believe, I would guess that our housing locator service that we have at the Housing Authority knows maybe 90% of the people that are at the shelter. That means they're talking to each other. Mm-hmm. They're working, they're looking, etc. In the past 12 months, we have issued, if I remember correctly, 57 vouchers for people that were otherwise homeless. I think 60 of them came from the shelter. And that includes me asking the shelter operator, this person is about to get a voucher and their 90 days is coming up. They need to stay there, help work with us and etc. They need another 2 or 3 months. That happens all the time.
Okay, thank you. I'm very curious in regards to how your clients are interacting with the shelter. In terms of, are they allowed to come and go whenever they please? Or is there specific hours when there are to be on the property and versus off the property?
I'll take that one if I may. It's kind of a complicated question now because of the current COVID pandemic. We, as a precaution to maximize safety in the shelter, because we do have folks living in a congregate setting, and many of those folks are high vulnerability. We have limited sort of in and out transportation from the shelter. But under normal circumstances now, we do have a shuttle service for the shelter, and we do allow folks to go in and out of the shelter using the shuttle service. So for the new shelter, we'll have what we call a no walk off and no walk on policy. So that folks aren't, to be good neighbors, we'll allow folks to leave the shelter by a shuttle, and we'll bring them to predetermined shuttle stops throughout the city for them to go about their daily business. Most of the time, those folks are, a lot of folks have work, and we can't trap them in the shelter. We want them to be working on their housing plans. And so they need to be out. They need to have that to be able to go out and do the business of their housing plans. Okay, and the shuttle, that's general. That's not just because of COVID, correct? Correct. That's correct. Okay, thank you for that. So that actually answered my public transit. You mentioned bike racks. How many storage for the bikes? Are they racks? Are they lockers? Or is it just a room that they place them in, that it's locked? How does that work? It's in the shelter design there. You can see on the top of the storage, on the kind of the top right part of the pink area, it's a bike storage space. So it'll be a room inside the shelter, and inside that room there will be racks where folks will be able to lock up their bikes. Okay. How many staff is it expected to have at the shelter, and broken down by the number of shifts? So it's 24 hours, and so we'll have two folks. Between shelter staff and security, so we'll have at least two guards on site at all times. We'll bring a third guard on for the evening shuttle shifts that we send a guard with our shuttles to do to manage security on the pickups in the evening. And then throughout the day, depending on the time of day, so we'll probably have two overnights, between 3 and 6 staff on any time during the day, depending on if the managers and the site leads are there. And the navigators take different shifts depending on what day of the week it is. That way we can allow navigation to take place for folks. If people are working during the day and navigators are only there during the day, then they never meet with a navigator. So we want to stagger the navigator shifts. And so sometimes maybe Thursday and Friday we'll have an evening navigator, and Monday, Wednesday, and Saturday, we'll have the morning navigator. So there is some variance in the number of staff on site at a time. It's anywhere between 2 and 8 or 9 staff, and always a minimum 2 security guards. Now, is the security guards performing these neighborhood patrols? The neighborhood patrols will be performed by our staff. Yeah. Okay, so it's an outreach team that's actually going out there. Okay, that's correct.
I'm sorry, you all talked at once. I didn't understand the answer.
Yes, the neighborhood patrols are conducted by Mercy House staff, and so they're out there. You'll probably see them in their red. We have bright red T-shirts that have a slogan that says "Talk to me about your housing plan" on them.
I really don't care what they wear. I'd like Commissioner Chavez's question answered. I didn't understand the answer. He's asking, I believe, is it the security personnel that's at the facility that's doing the 500 and 1,000 foot radius community safety?
No, it will be Mercy House staff, not security, that do those patrols.
Okay. Okay, so. Okay.
Commissioner Frank, I don't want to speak for Timothy, I apologize, but when he says that, he means it's outreach staff. It's people that are going out to the community, trying to serve them. It's not a security guard that is outreaching.
Okay, so it's not a security patrol.
No, it's like a neighborhood patrol that, so we send our staff out to see if, if our clients are in the neighborhood,
I see.
and we want to, keep track of their behavior, or we want to redirect them back onto their housing plans. As being good neighbors to our neighbors, we want to extend not just to the edge of the property, but we're gonna steward our folks a good radius around.
Thank you for that.
So with that, I'll return the questioning back to Commissioner Chavez. Please, Commissioner Chavez, I appreciate the interruption since we were in the same context of conversation.
I appreciate that, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm curious in regards to the number of, it's 55 residential units, and I'm assuming that these are the residential units that your current clients are going to be able to occupy, correct?
Mm-hmm. That's correct. Okay,
so you're going to be able to house 55 clients, and then as well as 110 unsheltered individuals, correct?
Yes,
okay.
That's correct.
Now, I'm assuming that, and that might be a bad thing, but that the unsheltered individuals are going to be sleeping in an open space very similar to what the K Street has?
So actually, if you look at the sleeping area diagram there, you can see that the beds are divided into kind of pods of 4. So there is a little bit more privacy than the open floor plan that we have in K Street.
So it's like a prison. Okay, the difference between men and women, I know in the staff report it says that you guys take in single men, single women, and couples. How does that work in terms of the sleeping areas?
So there are separate dormitory areas for each of those subpopulations. And so you say the northmost section is for men. The section below the men, but on the west side is for couples. And then the section on the southmost dormitory section is for women.
Okay, I'm sorry. Maybe staff could assist you in this because I'm not getting this. And I'm moving my screen out of the way. So, okay, where it's highlighted.
So that would be for women.
Only women, okay.
Only women. And then all the way, that section there that's currently highlighted, that's for couples.
Okay.
And then the northmost section, that's for men.
Okay. All right, thank you for that.
And each of those areas has a separate entrance to it, and so they're all divided from one another.
Okay. If I can get staff to jump to slide number 12 of the presentation, please. Now, please tell me, because for me, it's confusing looking through the staff's presentation and seeing the floor plans. But can you just tell me what each floor is actually going to have?
So the bottom floor is the floor plan we were just looking at. That floor would be the shelter.
Okay.
On the second floor, some of those will be offices. Those offices are for the manager of the residential area, and also for the case management staff who provide ongoing housing stability services to the permanent supportive housing. And then the rest of the floors of Sec 2 through the top, through the 5th floor are they're basically 1 or 2 bedroom apartments for permanent supportive housing.
Okay. I kind of want to jump into the density bonus that you guys are requesting. I know you guys are having 10 parking spaces. One of them is dedicated for an on-site manager. And then you have, I believe, 4 of them that was going to be for ADA accessible parking, and then the rest are general. Now, based off of the number of employees that you guys are having, and I'm assuming that you guys are going to have county representatives visit the site potentially and city employees, where are they supposed to be parking at if you limit it down to 10?
Brittany, I think. No.
Well,
Okay, I'm sorry. I thought Brittany might
This is-
take that.
No,
this
yeah.
is state mandated, so it's not a discretion. It's ministerial, as the staff report says. So it's not a choice that our applicant created. It is a ministerial approval based on state law.
Okay.
When you have 100% affordable housing, parking does not have to be provided at all. When I read the staff report, I saw this as a gift of 10 parking spaces.
And Madam Chair, I read that staff report also, and I did see that too. My whole thing is just trying to figure out where the parking thing, because throughout our entire city, we have issues with parking. And I just wanted to know if additional parking is needed, where those individuals going to be heading to. But
Mr. Kolowitz, you could have someone put up the parking inventory. Maybe Joe could do that. That was one of the slides that staff prepared to show where all the parking is in the area. So maybe we could look at that a little more closely. Maybe you can go through it again.
This was the, in the draft, as I mentioned previously, there was a parking study that's in progress. And this surveyed all of the parking in the downtown area. And essentially, there was determined to be an excess amount of parking generated in the downtown area, which is why the downtown code really went towards a reduction in the number of parking that would be required for all of the projects. As I mentioned, even for like a commercial project that was developed, they could provide all of their parking via an in lieu fee and not provide any parking on site. And that was because of the availability of both the street parking as well as the public parking lots that are available in the downtown area.
Have you got an arrow showing where the project is on this parking inventory slide?
So it's actually just outside of the boundary area there. So this is the Civic Center. So these are the two parking lots. This is the library, and this is the City Hall Development Services building. And the site is essentially right there. And then there is a public parking lot right adjacent to that, as well as the street parking in the area.
Okay. Final question. And is this project going to be built by local labor groups?
What does that mean? What are local labor groups? You mean union?
Union, local labor union groups.
Oh, you didn't say union, so I just trying to clarify the question. Can anyone respond to that? Are we able to make a commitment of, or even consider that at this point?
Hi, I guess I just want to make sure I understand the question better. You know, we will have a general contractor, and what we always encourage them to do is to reach out to the local labor market and kind of advertise in that area if they can, so that we can get local labor. But of course, if there's any specific direction on this or requests from the city, we're absolutely happy to work with Emilio and Elsa and implement their best recommendations to get a local labor force if possible.
Okay, I appreciate that. And
Yeah,
the reason
course.
why I asked that is because, you know, Ventura County has a large local labor union group, and I think it would be very beneficial to keep that tax dollars here, because they'll be able to shop and spend their money here where they work. That's all. Thank you, Madam Chair.
You're welcome. Any other commissioners have any questions or comments? Or
Yes, Madam
Yeah.
Chair.
Yes, Vice Chair Sanchez.
Thank you very much.
Mhm.
Just some questions. One of them has to do with some part of this, I believe, was answered. I just have sort of more specific answered on this, which is there was a question earlier about the after the 90 days, if it's still necessary to stay there for a bit. So can that be, how long of a time can that be? Can that be 6 months? Can it be even theoretically like a year if it's necessary? Because obviously, this is very, I think, is a very important component. There's that help that to do a transition into out of homelessness. Whoever can answer that.
So the short answer to your question is that we're going to continue to provide extensions on that length of time as needed until that person moves into permanent housing. So part of our philosophy of services, it could be.
Okay.
It could be a year. So part of our philosophy of services is we want to make a system that moves towards ending homelessness. And we know that if people come into the shelter and if they're working towards their housing plan and if let's say it's 9 months, let's say it's a year, and we say, oh, sorry, your time's up. That person goes back to the street and they're homeless again,
sure.
Right? And if
we see that a lot, yeah.
That just makes them more, that adds to the trauma in their life. And that makes them deeper in their homelessness rather than moving them away from homelessness towards housing.
If I may, I just have a couple more questions also. Are there other, will there be other nonprofits that are also providing beds also? I'm not sure if there are now, but are there any others right now that have beds besides I keep on calling it the Armory, but see the Navigation Center. I didn't really realize it was called the Navigation Center.
So we'll be the only operators in this facility, but there are a variety of other operators throughout, the community, and some of them do provide different types of beds to the homeless.
Okay, and just one more, which is so the Navigation Center at some point it'll probably cease. It won't exist anymore once you take over, and the other other nonprofits that might be doing services. Would it cease to exist at some point, or will it still be around for referrals?
Are you referencing where we are currently operating, sir?
No, in the future.
Oh, gosh, in the future, I think the hope would be, yes, we would be put out of business, that it would have done what it's supposed to do, and we've moved folks into housing. When that day comes, I would be excited to have that conversation.
Yeah, because 400, that's significant. That's really, really good. Thank you.
Just so I can clarify that, I'm sorry, were you through, Vice Chair Sanchez?
Yes.
Just so I can clarify that, I may have misinterpreted the staff report. I was under the impression that once this facility is in place, that the K Street facility will be repurposed.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. Yeah. So just so we're clear, there won't be two being run by Mercy House. There will only be this one upon its completion.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you for that clarification. Thank you.
Yes. Okay, thank you. Commissioner Fearing, any questions or concerns?
Yeah, thank you very much. I do have a couple follow-up questions. Thank you very much, staff, for your presentation. This is revolving around services as well. And you mentioned a number of services that this facility, this Navigation Center, is going to provide. For example, I'm interested, are the folks that are in there, you're helping them find shelter, new homes, will they have access to Wi-Fi?
Yes, definitely. We will definitely provide access to Wi-Fi.
Okay. How about mental health services? Number of
Definitely.
our
So
homeless have mental health issues, or there's going to be mental health services provided to them.
Yes, we work very closely with partners in the community, both public and private, other agencies that provide that mental health service. Really, there's a whole. It's not just provided by us, right? So we're gonna refer our clients to those services as they're available in the community, as each case needs it. So if a client needs medical attention, if they have an ongoing medical need, if they have an ongoing behavioral health need, if they need health recovery services, all of those types of services we're going to connect them to, so that they can lower the barriers they face, so that they can get into housing.
Okay. And final question: we live in a very new world now, a world that is full of COVID. So in the future, we do have a vaccine now. We're going to have several vaccines. Is there going to be a condition of entry to be inoculated?
I don't think that that's something we'd be able to require.
Okay.
Part of our philosophy of service is that we have a low barrier to entry. And I think that would if we were to require something like that, then folks who needed to access care, they would refuse the care they need.
Yeah, and I think that might be illegal. Yeah.
We need a waiver of liability on our admission fees. Anyone else have anything that they want to inquire about? Commissioner Meyer.
Thank you, Chair Frank. The vaccine, I read an article about that today, and apparently the law regarding mandating vaccines is fairly robust in terms of businesses, and obviously, of course, as you know, schools and other facilities can require vaccines. We're not at that place yet where that's being required, and for an emergency use authorization vaccine like these, that's another hurdle, but something to keep in mind for the safety, because we're gonna need those vaccines to get to the next place and to be able to actually have 110 people in beds in your facility.
We do take COVID-19 very seriously, and we have implemented, with the guidance of the healthcare agency, all of the guidance of practice. All of our staff are always wearing masks. We have set up hand washing stations. We have limited sort of our capacity in our shelters so that we can create that social distance. So we are constantly adapting to the guidance as it's released, and we really look forward to a world where the vaccine can be widely distributed. We don't have to worry about infection of this level.
Thank you.
Thank you for your question.
Thank you. That's all the questions I have.
Thank you, Commissioner Fearing.
Apologize, Commissioner Fearing. If I may continue.
Please, go ahead.
Thank you. So just for my clarification, we're here to review and approve the navigation center and the beds associated, that first floor aspect of it. We're not actually here to approve the entirety of the building. Yes. Okay. And yet, but the building, the 55 units available to residents are solely for the use of people who are homeless, who are working through their housing plan and enter into the navigation center. Is that correct?
May I answer that? When you work with something like this, you have to work through the coordinated entry system. However, within that coordinated entry system, what you are able to do is provide incentives and provide advantages for those who would be staying at the shelter itself. It gets, because of the sources of funding and housing law and so forth, if we could restrict it strictly for the people in the shelter, I know as the operator, we would love that. I'm just not sure that that is allowable. That is something that would have to be taken up with the coordinated entry system. But in our experience, in operating elsewhere, it has never been a problem for that to, in fact, de facto be the case.
Okay, so carrying on with that, the funding and sustainability of the project is based on local, state, federal funds? Is it also based on some private pay, possibly, that would be staying in those units?
So the way that we operate permanent supportive housing, generally speaking, and I just want to say this is general, right? No, it's not universal. But generally speaking, the way that it works is through a voucher, most frequently in our projects, project-based vouchers, because you can underwrite off of project-based voucher as opposed to tenant-based voucher. Then with our clients, what we do require is 30% of their adjusted gross income. So that amount will be obviously dependent upon what the actual income is of that person.
Understood. Thank you very much. That's all my questions for now.
Thank you. I have a few questions. I'd like to speak about the pets. Where are they housed?
So in our shelter programs, pets are housed with their owners, right? So we provide kennels that go either under or besides the beds, and folks are responsible to care for their pets and keep their pets with them. Most often we see people sleeping with their pets, but other times we see people with their pets sleeping in the kennels.
And you provide the pet food?
Yes.
And are they allowed to take their animals out to do their business?
Yes, they do. Well, there will be a dog run space provided. But we also will provide veterinary care. We have a veterinary partner in the Ventura County Animal Services that will come out. We consider the health and wellness of the animals that stay in our shelters to be part of the health and wellness of the shelter in general. And so we'll make sure that all of our pets are spayed and neutered, all of our pets are up to date on their vaccinations, all of our pets are registered and licensed.
Okay, you're reading my mind, because I'm more concerned about the human residents there having interaction with infected dogs. So thank you for going above and beyond on that. I'd like to know who, I understand that the city owns, and this is a little off topic as far as the news, but who is going to be the owner of this shelter?
This is Kyle Payne, president with Community Development Partners, the lead developer. And so the partnership, there'll be a limited partnership set up for the ownership of the project, of which we will be a general partner and Mercy House will be the managing general partner as well. That structure allows us to access low-income housing tax credits to leverage up those funds, bring in a tax credit investor who will provide the equity for the project. So that'll be the ownership structure.
Okay, and so you
sorry, I should say, how it's contemplated is the land will be going to the local housing trust and then leased to us, to the limited partnership in a long-term lease, so that land stays, in perpetuity with the housing trust, and they're setting up a land trust right now. So that's the goal, so that the land never actually leaves that ownership.
Is that trust a city entity?
Say that one more time, I'm sorry.
Would the trust be a city entity, or is the city giving up all ownership and control over this project once CDP comes in?
Yeah, the city will be providing it to the trust, to which the trust will be, I believe, a nonprofit entity, but I should check on that. But a land trust, its main goal is to hold property for the benefit of the community long term.
Okay, so yes, so the city would be establishing that for the benefit of the nonprofit LLC.
Chair Frank, Emilio Ramirez, Housing Director. The property currently is owned by the city, and the city will sell it, will divest it to the Ventura County Housing Trust Fund, which is a private nonprofit. And then the Ventura County Housing Trust Fund will lease in a ground lease and a long-term ground lease to the partnership that Mr. Payne just explained. And we will impose, while we will divest fee ownership, we will impose a deed restriction that requires it to be used for this purpose in a long term.
Okay, and that's going to be the same entity controlling the shelter as the housing? Yes, okay. I see Mr. Haynes nodding. Is that accurate? Okay,
That is accurate, yes.
right. I'm just looking at how businesses function, and you certainly don't want any diversity of thought in the purpose of the use of this structure down the line. So I'm glad to see this as a united presentation of ownership. It's not ownership, but you know what I mean. Owning the vision. Okay. I'd like to know, is there anyone here from Oxnard PD?
Yes, Chair Frank, we have two members of the Oxnard Police Department with us, both Scott Swenson as well as Alex Arnett.
Okay. I would like
Yes,
to,
Chair.
Thank you very much. I would like to know, I'm not so concerned about alcohol and liquor stores. What I'm concerned about is neighborhood patrols, police involvement in the area, whether or not we're going to have a designated patrol team just for security to the community, to the neighborhood, for perhaps those who would choose to congregate around this facility and beyond, who aren't customers or patrons that you're out looking for, that may have been rejected, or their time is up, or whatever it is.
We're confident that the relationship that we'll have between the Housing Authority and Mercy House will adapt to the needs of the homeless population, and we'll be partner in the process of referrals and using our homeless liaison officers to be a link between the services provided and those who need the services.
Yeah, I'm not talking about services, I'm talking about crime.
Okay. As far as the crime goes, if you're relating to the existing K Street site, we've had issues with some occasional calls for service, but crime has not been a significant issue, and we don't expect it to be at this site either.
If I may, we know there's always a concern around sort of negative behaviors when we talk about a homeless shelter. And something that we've found in our experience, and whenever we open up a shelter, whenever we open up a new program, there's always a lot of concern about something new being opened. And we found that the neighbors consistently find over time that our presence is an improvement on things in the neighborhood, and not a detractor. If look back at our presentation, there was a testimony from a local, like a neighborhood elected person, and he kind of extols about how the details in his neighborhood improved. There were less people wandering around. There was less incidents of kind of indecent things that took place after our program started and kind of began to address homeless issues in the neighborhood.
If I can add to that a little bit, Chairwoman, the program of homeless services, which includes my staff, Mercy, the Salvation Army, also includes the Oxnard Police Department and the homeless liaison officers and the response. In fact, that collection of people, the homeless services program coordinator on my team, Mercy's team, the Salvation Army team, and the Oxnard Police Department have a meeting every single Monday morning to discuss what is going on, what's going on at the shelter, what's going on at this encampment, and et cetera. It's an active partnership that coordinates everything together, including we hear from the police department, we're having this problem over here or this need over there, and we get together to respond to it. We will continue that, and that has been effective at the shelter, at the current shelter on K Street. And for that matter, to the point that there is response to the shelter from public safety, i.e. paramedic or et cetera. And I say that in a very intentional way because it is coordinated that way. Because what the alternative is that paramedic responds to an unsheltered person at Plaza Park. And in this case, it is coordinated and efforted in an organized way. And that organization occurs via this partnership will continue with Mercy and their team and Salvation Army and the county and Backpack Medicine and the HLOs and et cetera. It'll all continue to happen at this site.
Okay, you know, that's very valuable information. Is the public invited to any of those meetings or solicited for input?
The Monday morning meetings, no, it's all staff. I don't see why they couldn't be invited, but no, and they're really working meetings. They're to discuss, you know, we're going to go here today, or we're going to go, or et cetera, or whatever. I mean, they're working meetings. It just as a method of demonstration of an active working partnership that occurs between the police department and everybody else.
Okay, I think that's outstanding information. And thank you for clarifying that for me. So I don't have to ask about frequency of patrol or requirement for a beat cop or anything like that, because if that sort of need arose, you would be addressing that at your Monday work meetings, I'm assuming. Okay.
Correct.
Okay. Let's see, what else did I want to know? Since you're considering the apartments as part of the pipeline to permanent housing, what are the anticipated lease terms? Are you going to be renting that month by month, month to month, or leases, or what's the vision for that?
Yep. This is Kyle Payne again. I'm happy to answer that. We operate quite a few permanent supportive housing projects. So every tenant will have a lease, similar to a lease that you would have for anyone renting an apartment, and it'll adhere to our financing programs, including the low-income housing tax credit program and other funding sources we're receiving from the state. Leases will be for no less than a year, similar to your standard lease that you might see, and it rolls over typically to month after that. I think per state law, but we're always trying to get, as an owner and operator of housing and rental housing, we want retention when we can. And so we are always trying to get longer term leases in place so that we have, stability in our project and with the residents.
Yeah, I was wondering if there was a duration limit as part of that program. So you've answered that. That's terrific. And I think that's all I have. Oh no, I'd like a little clarification. We've had some talk about the 90 days and the flexibility that you're imposing for those who are in need of longer participation in the program in order to secure housing. But then if that's the case, why is there, or maybe explain to me what the reasoning is for putting language in that there's no re-entry after 5 months for someone who's been there 6 months?
I'm not sure where that language is included.
Sorry, Frank, my microphone was off. So that language comes from the Oxnard City Code and our standards that apply to emergency shelters. That is one of the requirements that are placed on the shelter itself. So that's where that language came from. And so it doesn't limit a person's stay. It says basically that if they've been there for I think 6 months, that once they leave, they have to stay away for 5 days before they can be allowed re-entry. And so that's essentially coming from the Oxnard City Code as a requirement that's being placed on this project.
Okay, so I'm not understanding. Give me an example. Someone goes in, they're admitted into the shelter, they're beyond the 90 days, they've done their 6 months. Do they have, according to the operators here, they don't have to leave after 6 months. Does the city require that they leave after 6 months?
No, so they wouldn't be required to leave. It's just that if they did leave, they would have to stay out of the shelter for 5 days. And again, that's one of the requirements that were put into the Oxnard City Code.
Well, why is it in the code if these operators don't have to comply with it?
They would have.
May I?
Please, someone.
I think that I want to make a distinction here between simply leaving the building and being exited from the program. So there may be a situation where a person, maybe they have an episode and they find it becomes unsafe for them to remain in the shelter, and we have to process an exit from the program. The city code says that if they've been in the shelter for a certain amount of time, then the length of time which they would be exited, they wouldn't be allowed to return to the shelter and re-engage in services for 5 days.
Okay, maybe I'm reading it wrong. It's no shelter patron shall be readmitted to the same emergency shelter within 5 days of being, and here's the operative word, discharged after a stay of 6 months. So you don't discharge, right? That's more of a medical term, right?
You are correct. That is more of a medical term. I think our understanding of what that language says is, let's suppose that somebody has stayed with us for X amount of time. And somebody asked earlier about program rules. There was a reason to exit them for the program. For example, maybe the health and safety and well-being of someone else. Right. If they were exited by us, then there is a waiting period before they could re-enter. That's our understanding of what that language is saying.
And you comply with that?
Oh, sure.
Yeah, okay. As it says, proposed patrons will not be readmitted to the same shelter within 5 days of discharge. Maybe there needs to be some understanding of what discharge means, because I totally understand what you're saying, Mr. Haynes. But I certainly wouldn't want any, being the lawyer here, I certainly wouldn't want anybody saying, well, wait a minute, I was in line and that guy's getting in before me. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely. We're obviously welcome to any clarifying language, and thank you for catching that.
Yeah. Okay. I don't have anything else. Commissioners, anything further?
Madam Chair, point of information. I'm just curious about the project site. The city is ultimately giving up the property into a trust fund to a private nonprofit property that the city owns. How much is the city paying Mercy House to operate the shelter?
No, that's not happening. Okay.
So number one, yes, the city does own the property, and we are divesting, selling it to the trust fund on the condition that the project that is described be operated. Currently, we have an operating agreement with Mercy House to operate the navigation center on K Street. It is approximately $2 million a year. What it would be at this site is a budget that we're still working on. I would imagine that it's going to be similar to that amount.
Okay, thank you.
And the trust they're selling it to, Commissioner Chavez, is a nonprofit.
Correct.
I'm aware of that, Madam Chair. I guess ultimately what I'm trying to figure out is why the city would give up a property they own. I get the purpose behind it is to get into an agreement to build what is being presented tonight, but I just don't understand why the city would want to give up property. But that's fine. I don't.
The reason, and I think Kyle can probably explain it better, but the reason that is in an effort to successfully structure the financing that it takes to build a project. So we're talking about $35 million development budget where the city is not paying $35 million. And as a condition of that source of money, we have to sell it. And in an effort to leverage or get the investment coming to the city of that $35 million, this is the structure that source requires.
Okay.
Commissioners, anything further? All right, not seeing anyone. I'll move on to public comment. I understand. Actually, you know what? Why don't we take a 3-minute recess? Give everyone a chance to do something. Okay, so let's see. It's 8:04. How about 8:10? Okay, I'll see y'all back here. Public comment?
Okay, Chair Frank, we are calling up the first member for public comment. This is Pat Brown that we're trying to contact.
Thank you.
Chair Frank, we're still trying to connect.
Okay.
Hello, Pat Brown.
Hello?
Hello, hi. Pat Brown, you're on the panel. You have 3 minutes.
I don't know what all those sounds are.
Pat, can you mute your TV?
I'm going to try to talk over it, whatever it is. You've got a really bad reception problem in the first place. And it's better now than it used to be a few weeks ago, but it's just terrible. The reason that I'm calling is because I've heard a lot of people here in Oxnard since all of this came up about the property just north of the library in that area and having a homeless shelter there that would help people to get jobs and so on as well. I've heard a lot of negatives. People don't want homeless people living anywhere near housing developments or people who are living in single-family homes. And I don't know why that seems to be, but it just seems to be that way. In my neighborhood, which is almost all of it is multifamily housing, apartment buildings, a couple of those, condominiums, and the Royal Palms Mobile Home Park, as well as another older mobile home park down south of the 5 Points intersection a ways. It just seems for some reason that people who live in single family homes, they want the neighborhood to be just like theirs, and they don't want any conflicts at all. Spending a year in my young adult life living in downtown San Francisco, where you have people sitting and sleeping on the streets all over the place, and you just step over them, around them, after a while, they get tired and they move somewhere else. They find another place to, but they're not getting their problem solved. This is helping people to solve their problem, and to bring themselves up to a normal stage. And that's absolutely necessary. And we need as much of that as we can get, frankly. The real concern that I have in that way is the parking. Because in my neighborhood along the east side of Oxnard Boulevard, we have a terrible problem with parking, and we get more multifamily housing, and then we get more problems with parking because there's never enough parking. They'll even drive up in the street, and they will double park, and they will just sit there waiting for a parking space to come. And then if somebody drives out, they immediately jump right into that parking space as quickly as they can. There's just not enough parking, and we can pretend that we don't have a parking problem, but it's just constantly getting worse, unfortunately. And you can count however many parking spaces that you want in the downtown area, you can count them, but there's always a parking problem. During the day, no, because everybody's out working, but at night, yeah, it's just dreadful. It's totally dreadful. I don't know what we'd have to do if we have a fire engine have to come in with an ambulance. We're in bad straits. Our streets aren't wide enough in the mobile home park, and it's very, very hard when people are parking on the streets, which they're not supposed to, but they're doing it because they can't just say Shazam and their car disappears, and Shazam their car reappears. You can't do that. So I don't know what your solution is going to be. We're going to play this game with the state of putting in less parking, but it's not going to do any good. As long as these people can't find a parking space, they will work very, very, very hard to get further ahead so they.
Thank you very much. Can we have our next public commenter, please?
Chair Frank, we're calling our next public speaker, Lucy Cartagena.
Thank you.
Next up is Peggy Rivera, followed by Jose Garcia.
Hello, Lucy. Hello, Lucy. You're live on the Planning Commission. You have 3 minutes to speak.
Hi, this is on the Navigation Center. My question was for the navigation is that why is the city fast forwarding it on the regulations, on the rules and regulations of zoning? Why are we letting the city go ahead and change zoning laws, change regulations, and not give community input? There hasn't been enough community input. Thanks to COVID, the community's not aware of a lot of things going on. So I just want the Planning Commission to really, really look at this. Even though it's just a special use permit, it's still a huge special use permit that's going to impact the city for decades. So without community input, with us changing laws, ordinances, rules for this project, what's to say somebody else doesn't want to come and build a project and then turn around and sue the city and say, well, you got to do this. Why can't anybody else? So what's to stop somebody else from wanting to do big major projects? And then what is to make us be accountable to allow type of things like this happening in our city? Because the city didn't let community action put in showers and put in beds because they said the ordinances wouldn't allow it. But yet we can bend and maneuver ordinances as we see fit. That's not right. It's not right for the community. It's not right that we have to deal with this, and it's not fair. And we should let the community be more aware. You're the Planning Commission. The commissions are the checks and balances of the city. If we don't intervene, who will? Thank you. That's all I got to say. Good night.
Thank you very much.
Chair Frank, we're now calling Peggy Rivera, followed by Jose Garcia, and then Barbara Macri Ortiz.
Great, thank you.
Hello, Peggy. You're live on the Planning Commission. You have 3 minutes to speak.
Okay, thank you. Peggy Rivera, Chair of the Commission on Homelessness. Thank you for allowing me to speak. I just want to say that prior to the October 1st community meeting, Amelia Ramirez had made a staff report to us advising us of the Navigation Center and had requested at the end of that for us to please sign a letter of support. And we told him that we could not do that at the time because we didn't have any information, and without any information, we didn't know what we were signing. So that is one thing I just wanted to say off the top. I do want to say that for point of clarity, I did not send in an email. I think it was Vice Chair Yukio Kano. And the next thing is 567 homeless are in our city, according to the 2020 count this last year. And I'm sure that after COVID, there is going to be a lot more homeless people. I think my concern here is that our commission is totally in support of the Navigation Center. What we are not in support of is the location. Many people think it's a great viable location. I really don't think it is, but that's my opinion. I will say that we're always going to have problems with shelter, whether it's low barrier or not. It makes a lot of difference when you have security. In the November meeting, after 7 months of not meeting, we had 2 owners from the Denny's restaurant come and complain about the Operation Home Key, which houses at the Navigation Center the homeless there, and all the problems they were having. That's a concern because we're even there, and Mercy's running that, and there was problems. I don't know if that's been resolved because we haven't discussed that. The next thing is, this is the first time I've heard that it's a 90-day program. This is part of a solution to end homelessness. We know we may never end homelessness, but this is part of it. And after 90 days, I do understand the extension part, but what guarantee is there? If they're not working on their housing plan, then they're going to get kicked out, and where are they going to go if not to the street again? So we want to find a viable solution that's going to meet the need of the community
30 seconds
along
left.
with the need of the person. So, okay. So that's all I want to say. And the parking, it's going to be horrendous. I think it's just going to be a big problem. So thank you very much for allowing me to speak.
Thank you very much.
And Chair Frank, we're now calling Jose Garcia, followed by Barbara Macri Ortiz, and then your last public commenter tonight is Veronica Munoz.
Should we move on to the next one?
Chair Frank, Jose Garcia's number was coming up as busy, so we're going to move on to the next speaker and we'll come back to him after we finish our next two.
Perfect.
So we're moving on to Barbara McRae Ortiz.
Hi,
Hello.
Barbara. Hi, Barbara. You're live on the Planning Commission. You have 3 minutes.
Okay. Thank you. Hi, Barbara McRae Ortiz here. Happy to comment on this item. I am a member of the Fremont South neighborhood. The shelter is very close to my house. It's been working well, and it has not posed problems to the neighbors. And actually, our community is happy that the shelter is there. With respect to the Navigation Center, I think it's a wonderful opportunity to take the next step in our quest to end homelessness. It's a long process, but in listening to the discussion and the explanations, there's a plan, there's professionals that have experience, and I think the idea of expanding the shelters for housing and having case managers, that is a good way to go. A way where we're going to have some success. So it's important, and I think we should focus on it and keep sight of what the goals are and not be negative that in bringing out all the bad. I heard the comments about parking. I really don't understand them. I live not that far from that other shelter or where it would be. There's a lot of parking lots. There's a thing called shared parking. I can see some shared parking arrangements. They work well in other communities, and they should be able to work well here. I don't think that should scare us away. This is not really that dense, and we're talking about small units, so I don't quite get that. I just, parking is the fail-safe for when you want to complain about something. Everybody complains about parking. The other thing is, I think we need to focus on what our goals are and how are we going to get there. And this is the best plan I have seen. I mean, when the city manager came in, he talked about let's move to housing first, and I think that this project really puts us on that road. That in combination with some of the other programs in the city, I think I'm very hopeful about that. We're going into an era that's going to be, or a period of time is going to be very, very difficult
30 seconds
for a lot of people. I'm sorry, what?
30 seconds left.
Oh, okay. And so I think it's crucial that we ramp up our efforts in these areas. And I think this has been thoughtful. There's a lot of conditions, and I don't see any issue. I don't see any development issues in terms of any kind of discrimination with respect to this is a CUP apparently, and it's all legal. It's all legal, and under the housing element, it's something. And under the Housing Accountability Act, this is definitely something that you would really need to approve. So I would urge you as a citizen and also as an attorney to please vote in favor of the Navigation Center, and let's move it along. Thank you very much. Have a great day. And stay safe, everyone.
Thank you, Ms. Ortiz, McRae Ortiz.
And Chair Frank, we're going to move along to Veronica Munoz again, and then we'll follow up with Jose Garcia, and that'll be the end of public comment today.
Very good.
Hello, Veronica. You are live on the Planning Commission. You have 3 minutes to speak.
Hi, good evening. This is Veronica Munoz from, just a second. Okay, this is Veronica Munoz from BG's Cafe, and at the risk of sounding repetitive, I'm going to mention some of the things I've already said at the last community meeting and at the city council. There are many business owners like ourselves who are not necessarily opposed to helping the homeless, but we're just opposed to the location of this shelter, of this new navigation center. Even though it has enhanced services and amenities, we don't doubt that this is a necessity and that it is something good for the homeless population. But we just ask that you consider the area, that you consider downtown Oxnard and the revitalization efforts that we have undergone the last couple of decades here in downtown. There are other cities who have built shelters like this, and they definitely do attract other homeless, not just the ones that are sheltered there. And there's definitely going to be people who have problems with mental health issues, with drug addiction, sexual predators. And when you look at this population, to be in a residential area like the one that it's going to be, I think it's a very high risk area. Personally, I live there. It is just a couple of blocks away from my home and the homes of many other families, right across from the library. And I just don't think that this is the right location for this. And I wanted to quote someone in an article that I read in a city called Susanville, where they did this exact same thing to their town. And she mentioned something along these lines. My home is not the refuge it once was for me. Somewhere along the way, decisions were made for this town to become a refuge for individuals who are not invested in our community, people who use and take and destroy, people whose bad behavior is protected under the label of homelessness. As we look for solutions, I hope and pray that they will be centered on restoring our community and protecting our resources and our businesses. I don't have all the answers, but I really hope that you will reconsider the location more than anything of this center. That's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, and Chair Frank, we're going to be moving back to Jose Garcia, who is the final public speaker for tonight.
Hi. Good evening. This is Veronica.
Hello, Jose. You're live on the Planning Commission. You have 3 minutes to speak.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody, planning commissioners. My name is Jose Garcia. I work for the Laborers International Union of North America, Laborers Local 585 Ventura. We're calling tonight in support of moving forward with this project, not only for the need of jobs in the area because of the situation we're all in right now. Construction is one of the industries still hit very hard with COVID and with unemployment. So I think moving forward with this project would be great in that reason, and also for the need of the homelessness. There is a lot of homelessness right now in the area, and with this bleak future ahead of us, it doesn't look like anything's going to get better, and it would be smart for us to be ready for an influx of more homelessness to offer places for families. So with that, I think, in my opinion, we can move forward with this. And thank you for your time.
Thank you so much. And if we have no further speakers, I'll close public comment. And we'll move to any further discussion of the planning commissioners. Anybody? Comments? Commissioner Chavez.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just had a couple of questions for Director Ramirez. I don't know if he's still there. I'll just go ahead and ask them. I'm very curious to know if the city has any of its own outreach teams. I understand that the navigation facility is going to be monitoring their people and ensuring that they're doing neighborhood patrols for their people. But in terms of other homeless individuals that are not part of the facility, does the city take a role in getting them services and ensuring that they're not causing a nuisance in downtown or surrounding neighborhoods?
Yes, we absolutely do. We do have our own street outreach team, and we have a street outreach team that is focused in downtown. The Oxnard Police Department also has a homeless liaison crew officers, and our street outreach team coordinates with that homeless liaison officer group.
How often are the liaisons from the city reaching out throughout downtown?
Every day.
Okay. I make that comment only because I was in downtown 3 days ago, and there were homeless throughout downtown area, and particularly surrounding the public library. So I'm not sure if you have timeframes of when the employees go out there, but one was pulling trash out of the trash cans and just littering it all throughout the area. Another one was urinating on a city building near the parking structure. So that's the concern. And I share those same concerns with the public when they make that. So I was just curious in regards to how often a team is actually going out there and the timeframes that they're going out there, reaching out, because it's very easy to tie those homeless that are not part of this organization location and look at it in a negative way. Those are my comments. Thank you.
I would say, number one, by no means am I claiming, or I don't think anyone else is claiming, that we have solved homelessness. So homelessness is still a work in progress. And in terms of the street outreach team, they're out in the community citywide, not just in downtown, but they're in the community every day. And if there is a need to respond to a specific site, by all means, I can give you my number. I can dispatch them to a site from wherever they happen to be at that moment. They're responding to the encampments, they're responding to the other part of town all of the time.
And understand, I don't think I made a comment or suggested that anybody solved homelessness. But maybe you can clarify. I thought you said there was a dedicated team to downtown.
There is. So we just signed, we're close to signing an agreement with Salvation Army, who is our street outreach provider, that is going to dedicate service to downtown. That is in place as of the 1st of January. Right now, we do have a street outreach team that is citywide. They are active right now. It's a team that coordinates with the HLO officers, Sandra and Anna, and Sandra, they're engaged all of the time, and together with my team as well, Jessica.
All right, thank you for that clarification that there is no dedicated team currently, but there will be at the beginning of the year. Thank you, Director.
Okay, anything else from the commissioners as far as this item? All right, I'll move the recommended action.
Second it.
We have a motion by Frank and a second by Dozier. I have nothing further to say with respect to the motion. Commissioner Dozier, you have a second. Do you have anything further you'd like to add with respect to the motion?
Yes, just that I noticed through the deliberation and the conversation tonight that there has been some coordination between city staff and Mercy House and the Downtown Design Review Board and the Homeless Commission. So all that interaction is kind of buried in the staff report. So it's not easily noted for the public. So I would just like to just say in the future, maybe staff would like to include in a addendum other community commissions or other organizations that they kind of worked on this, because the residents' input was heavily influenced the downtown design review. I went to several of those meetings. I mean, they spanned it over years. So there is a lot of resident input that was a part of this. It's just that it's buried so deep in the report that I don't think the average resident would be able to note it. And that's all. With that being said, I could support this project. So thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Other commissioners care to have discussion on the motion? I don't see anybody, so we'll have a roll call, please. I'm sorry, did I miss someone? No. Can we have roll call, please? I'm sorry, Commissioner Meyer, can't hear you.
Okay, no problem. I actually just confirmed that I have no further commentary on this motion.
Okay.
Thank you for asking.
Of course. All right. It looks like we're ready for a roll call vote, please.
Chair Frank?
Yes.
Commissioner Dozier?
Yes.
Vice Chair Sanchez?
Yes.
Commissioner Chavez?
Yes.
Commissioner Fearing?
Yes.
Commissioner Meyer?
Yes.
Motion passes. The decision of the Planning Commission is final unless appealed to the City Council within 18 days.
Very good. Thank you very much. And thank you all for your presentations. Have a wonderful Christmas.
Thank you all very much.
Okay.
Thank you all.
Thank you very much.
All right, let's move to item G on our agenda, study session / reports. I don't think we have anything, Mr.
Chair
Coppola.
Frank, staff does not have any study sessions or reports to present.
We'll move to Planning Commission business. Any Planning Commission business other than my very warm wishes for a beautiful holiday? Commissioner Meyer.
Thank you, Chair Frank. I sense from the proceeding of our motion this last time that we're already making space within the motion process for final commentary before we move to vote. And so I appreciate that. I don't know if that was intentional from last meeting to this meeting.
I don't want anyone to have any grief that they didn't have an opportunity to speak. So this gives everyone a final last, chance to get in an argument or maybe rebut an argument that another commissioner has mentioned. In discussion with city staff, it was, and I agree, might as well give every opportunity to be heard. So, especially before a vote. So I'm going to try to incorporate that as procedure so that everyone, every single person, staff, applicant, whoever, I try to let them all speak. And before we vote, I will have a final discussion on the motion.
That's wonderful.
Glad you like it.
That's wonderful. I appreciate that. I mean, we just had a couple of situations where we had an intense argument that was followed by an immediate motion, and the experience was quite abrupt, and then we had no further discussion available to us. So I think this is an improvement. So much appreciated.
I agree. Thank you. Community development staff updates.
Chair Frank, we just have a few for you tonight. Back on December 15th, just a couple days ago, the City Council met and they took 2 actions for final maps on projects that the Planning Commission had been involved with. One was a final map on the 700 block of Doris Avenue. This was a smaller project. It was a 1 acre parcel that was being subdivided into 7 different lots, roughly 6,000 square feet plus each. So that notification was given to them. In addition, the Wagon Wheel project, there was another parcel that was being subdivided for purposes of a condo map, 113 condo units in particular. And the City Council has been notified of that final map action. The Community Development Director has signed both of those maps as of this point in time, which means that those maps are now legally created, so they can move forward in terms of actual development. So that's just a quick follow-up for you. Other than that, the only other item that I have to report is while we approved a calendar that you'd be meeting on January 7th, we do not have any items that are ready for you on that date. So your next Planning Commission meeting is going to be on January 21st. So thank you very much for all your service. Enjoy your holidays without having any Planning Commission homework. And we look forward to playing with you on January 21st. In the meantime, there will be some recruitment efforts that are happening regarding planning commissioners and other community advisory groups that are out there. So if the city clerk has not contacted those that are in the reappointment world, so Commissioner Dozier, Commissioner Furing, and Vice Chair Sanchez, if you have not been contacted, please reach out to me in particular, and I'll go ahead and connect you accordingly. And I think that's the conclusion of our comments. So just thank you very much and Happy New Year, Happy Holidays. Please be safe.
Thank you very much. And we'll adjourn. Thank you.
Thank you all. Have a wonderful holiday.
You too.
Happy holidays.
To you.
Thank you. Happy holidays.
Yes.